Hello, I'm Brian Glick. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Computer Weekly. In this video, we want to talk to you about spend management. Now, when you hear that phrase, maybe your initial reaction is, I don't need to know about spend management. We manage our spend. Well, yes, of course you manage your spend, but how do you manage your spend? Do you manage your spend after you've spent? You probably know what you're going to spend, but are you actually managing your spend as it's happening? How effectively and efficiently are you doing that? And that's sort of what we want to try and explore in a bit more detail in this, is exactly how do you best manage your spend management. That will come a lot clearer as we talk about it. Now, to help me do that, I'm joined by Brandon Till. Brandon is the Head of Transformation at Soldo. Brandon, welcome. Thanks for coming along to join us today.
Thank you.
Let's try and define what the problem is here, Brandon. There's this phrase which people use a lot now, spend management. But in everyday speak in any business, everybody's going to talk about how they're managing their spend. Tell us really what we mean about the problem that we're looking to solve here.
Yeah, it's true. Every business, they've already got an approach for how they manage spending. They're doing this today in one way or another. And the problem that I see is that finance people have become comfortable with what's uncomfortable. On a personal level, I think it happened to me when I was 18. I had a dental surgery. I had to get a fake tooth put in, and it felt a little tight, felt a little odd, and wasn't great. It was kind of, but I was like, I didn't know what it was supposed to be like, and it was uncomfortable until for 18 years, until I was 36. I went to a new dentist, and as I'm laying back in the chair, bright light in the face, he pulls out a camera and starts taking pictures of my mouth, and I'm like, well, this has never happened before. And he tells me he's a teacher at the dental school, and that this tooth has been a strange one that he's never quite seen before, and he offered to replace it, and we went through a procedure. He put in a new one, and then I realized that for 18 years I'd had this really misfitting tooth stuck in my mouth, and it had been tight and uncomfortable, but I'd used to living with it. I didn't know anything different. And that's really the problem with spend management. We get used to how we're dealing with the process. We get used to our approach, and we think this is normal because we don't know anything different. But in reality, especially with the decentralized spend of handling employee expenses and this business spending that doesn't fit through the procurement processes, it tends to be slow and it's messy and it's retroactive of collecting receipts and what did we spend, and closing end of the month is a big headache. And it's this pain that finance has just gotten used to dealing with, and they don't realize that there's new approaches, there are better ways to automate this away, to ease up, to make it a more comfortable day-to-day life for people.
You'll forgive me if I say now, let's explore a little more how to take a bite out of that problem. But I think people will identify what you've put there. Maybe the problem, perhaps not the tooth so much, but I think the principle of being comfortable with the uncomfortable is something a lot of people will recognise. You define the problem. What's the impact of it? What does this actually mean across a business when this is taking place?
Yeah, it's an impact. It's not a finance problem. It's a business problem. It causes the finance team. It's a lot of wasted time. They're worrying about these piddly little things when they could be doing probably some more strategic or important work. And that's the chasing receipts. That's the matching it to budget, matching it to bank. And we did a report with Forrester last year, and they found that finance people could be saving 80% of the time on generating the monthly reports that they do every month. And they could be saving, I think it's 62% of time just managing employee expenses. And at the same time, as a business problem, employees are spending twice as long as they need to handling their own expense claims. So that's part of it. The other thing would be the employees paying out of pocket. Is that still okay? The Ipsos did a report where it showed that causes 61% of employees discomfort in their own personal finances because they're paying for work expenses out of pocket. So as in a cost of living crisis and in the state of affairs, is that still okay to be asking employees to be paying out of pocket? So I'd say those two things. It's the efficiency and it's the use of funds, personal funds for businesses that causes a lot of stress and undue stress towards employees and wasted time for finance.
I mean, as a manager who has to do a monthly report, I would absolutely jump at the opportunity to save 80% of the time that gets taken doing something like that, and I'm sure a lot of people would as well. So, how do I go about doing this? Well, how does an organisation achieve that sort of scale of time saving and efficiency saving?
Yeah, I think it's a good point you bring up. It's that for most people you have to do this as part of your day-to-day work, but you don't have a KPI towards filling out your expense reports. So to fix it, it's about looking at what's this process of spending in a business, and how do you take a new approach as finance? How do you say, you know what, I'm here to be a partner to people who don't want to be doing this, to help alleviate the load for my team. And you have to look at how does business spending happen? And really it breaks down to 3 stages. You make the payment. That's sort of the middle stage. Before that, there's this rule of governance. So you have rules you put in place whether it's access to money, what approval processes do you go through, what can you spend on certain things, and the rules and the governance you put in place before you make the payment, which is step 2, and then you make the payment to buy something that you need for work or to do your job, and the last is the review, that collecting the receipt, enriching the data, reconciling it, matching it. So those 3 stages: government, payment, review, and looking at then across those stages, where's your approach falling short, and where can your approach be improved, and that's your approach to spend management.
Okay, so we've got these 3 stages: governance, payment, review. Let's go through them one by one, perhaps. You said in your previous answer there, within each of those there are sort of signs you can spot that give you clues as to how you could be doing this better. So let's start first of all then with governance. Talk us through governance. What are the signs you're looking for there, and what can you do about it?
Yeah, so governance, I think you need to look at, do you have a view of spending? Do you have an accurate view of spending as it's happening? For one, you can't control it if you can't see it. The second would be, can you do anything with those budgets once they're set? Are your budgets so locked that once you've set that rule that's it? Or it hurts you to not be able to move that money around as it's needed. As an example, we work with a care home here in the UK, and they needed to start recruiting for more workers for their home, and so they set a new digital ad budget. They were using Soldo, our platform, so they were able to create a separate budget for that, and a separate card, a virtual card that they put towards these ad platforms, and they set a monthly budget. 3 days later, the head of HR is recruiting for this, comes back and says, hey, this card's not working. And the finance person takes a look at it, and the monthly budget had been spent in 3 days. And so because they had the visibility to see exactly what's happening, because they had preset rules to know you're not going to overspend and you can control this, they had the visibility, and they could then have a conversation to say, hey, you set something up wrong, but the risk was limited. They spent their budget, they didn't overspend, they didn't get to the end of the month and find out we greatly overblew our budget. So governance is about having the controls without being controlling, and putting it in place so that you have that visibility, you can see what happens, and then have a conversation to figure out what's the best way forward in a situation like that.
Okay, yeah, that's all I think clearly explained. So governance, look out for those sort of errors in spending and misspending and running out of budget, spending things too quickly. The next stage you explained then was the payment stage. Same question in that. What do you need to look out for during that sort of payment phase?
Yeah, payments is an interesting one because it feels like it should be easy. We make payments for things every day in our regular lives. And somehow, again, in business, we've made this hard. And so the questions I'd ask for people is, do people need to wait ages to get access to money in their company to make a payment for work? And do they need to use their personal funds to make purchases for work? I know on just from my own experience, I've had times where I'm traveling for work and I need to request funds to buy like a plane ticket, and the amount of time then to get those funds, this is in the past, it's been, by the time you get it, you watch that flight, the cost of the flight go up and up and up. So all of a sudden you're spending more than you could have if you would have had easier access to the funds. And the second is then just paying out of pocket, right? Is that still something that you're okay with having employees do? It does cause that undue stress. It does cause some extra anxiety, and can you enable your employees to be spending company money and to not have to deal with that this day and age?
Okay, so that's the payment stage, and I think you've given some very easy to understand and probably very easy to recognise sort of red flags for people to look out for in that stage of the process. Let's come on to the third of those, which was your review process. Again, what are the sort of things people need to be looking out for here?
Yeah, there's 2 things I'd say finance should look out for in review, and one is time. Are you spending a lot of time in your review process chasing down those receipts, reconciling expenses? So is it an inappropriate amount of admin that you're spending there, and could that be a way you really free up time for your team and for the business? 2 is just duplicate expenses. Do you suspect maybe you have duplicate expenses coming through, whether that's a number of companies have multiple subscriptions to the same software they could consolidate, or software they've subscribed to that they're no longer using, and to have a clear view of that so you know where you can help to cut. So giving yourself better review processes, mainly it just saves a lot of time for finance teams, for employees, and helps free people up to do more important work for the business.
Okay, so you've given us a very clear picture here of these 3 key stages, ways that people need to think about in order to get better at spend management. There's an obvious closing question to you really here in terms of for anybody who's watching this and thinking, I can recognise that we need to get better in these sort of areas. If you're at the start of that process, starting to think about how do we improve this, how do we have a look at how we could do things better in our organisation, what are the maybe one or two things that you would advise people to say, keep this in your mind? This is the thing you need to always be thinking about.
There's a couple things. One, if you're looking at this idea is that you have payments made in governance, making payments in the review, it's not thinking of them as three separate stages. Think of them as one stage. How do you connect them together? So if you can have employees making payments that are connected to the rules and that you put in place, the governance, that's where you get real control as finance. And you can control the spending while freeing up employees to spend. The other would be then connecting that payment stage to the review stage. So instead of spending that time, you now have visibility. You understand what's spent, where, when, by whom. So you get that control and that visibility, which is so vital for finance. So thinking of these three stages as a single process, and how do you help consolidate them as one thing? And that's really effective spend management. The second would be, if you suspect that you have problems in these areas or others, we have a checklist. It's called 6 indicators. You might need a spend management solution. So it can help you to delve into some of the other common problems or common symptoms that we see businesses have in their current approach that might be causing them this pain that they're unaware of, or that they realize there could be a better way for us to do this. So check out that checklist. Reconsider your approach, and if you're living with what's uncomfortable, would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that I do like the whole phrase of getting used to, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'm sure that's something a lot of people will very much recognise from what you've been saying there, Brandon. Brandon Till from Soldo, thank you very much for coming along on sharing your experiences of helping people to manage their spend more effectively. Perhaps, hopefully, we've given you a bit of an indication here now about, what's the difference between spend management and simply managing spend, and how a new approach and a spend management solution could help you to be a lot more effective and efficient in the way you spend your organisation's money. That's all we've got time for this time. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.